Hey folks, so whichever vacuum cleaner you own, it is inevitable that it is going to require ongoing maintenance. That's simply a fact of life. Whether you have a budget model or the most premium, most expensive, all bells and whistles, all singing and dancing cleaner, it is still going to require ongoing care in order to keep it in tip-top condition. Now, for the purposes of today's demonstration, I've got the new Shark PowerDetect here, but hopefully for the most part you'll be able to follow along even if you have another model. So the Shark PowerDetect is a corded model. As you can see, it is very powerful, and it does have two rollers, so a little bit of extra work for us there in order to keep this cleaned. And it is advertised as having anti-hair wrap. A lot of models will have this feature, but even so, you can still expect hair to be getting caught in these rollers after extended use, so just be aware of that. The technology may help prevent it to some degree, but it's not really possible to stop it from happening completely. So what I'm going to do is be somewhat systematic. We're going to start from the top, work our way down here, and I'm going to show you some of the places where blockages may occur and also where the filters are located, because they are going to need to be cleaned regularly. And finally, we're going to move our way down to the main floor head. So let's start just by removing some of the additional accessories here. Now, again, these can get blocked, so it is worth just checking down the hoses and the tubes and the open spaces to ensure that that hasn't happened. But I'm not going to be focusing on these today. Let's just concentrate on the main event. And just before we get into that, I want to show you this tool that I find really helpful when it comes to these sorts of jobs. It's a little mini air duster. It's only portable, can fit into your pocket, but this thing has a lot of power to it. And I just find this invaluable when it comes to helping. It won't get blockages out, but it will help to remove dust and bits of debris that are hard to reach in some cases. So I usually have this to hand when I am going through a vacuum cleaner maintenance. So in my case, I'm just going to start by removing the top section here, which is connected to the hose. And there's also a switch on the back so that I can actually remove the hose completely. Most modern vacuum cleaners that are worth their salt will really allow you to disassemble them in many places, so that anywhere a blockage is able to accumulate, you should be able to gain access to it. And if you do have a blockage in a hose such as this, then I recommend just a long, strong stick or something to try and wiggle that blockage free. Alternatively, you can get the drain unblockers. They're like long wires that can bend into different shapes. They can be useful for removing some stubborn blockages out of these hoses too. Next up, in this case, we can actually remove the main wand system here. Okay, so take that out. Again, just have a peer through. Yep, looks completely clear to me, but if this was blocked, I would want to unblock that before doing anything else, especially if you notice a severe lack of suction in your vacuum cleaner. Checking for blockages is usually the #1 priority. Now, next up, we're going to want to remove the main tank, as there's a number of things here that we are going to want to check and clean. So in my case, for the Shark PowerDetect, there's a button release here. Click that and I can remove the tank. Now, each time I've used the vacuum cleaner, I will just empty the tank here. That's really easy. There's a catch to do so, and all the dust and debris that I vacuumed up can be thrown away. You can also clean the inside of this tank out. Okay, I'll just show you that down there. And you can actually just put this under some warm water. Don't make it hot water. You don't want to obviously damage the plastic, but you can clean that out and then let it dry out. Now, what's really important is this device that's in here, and this can get blocked quite easily. So in the case of the Shark Detect, there's two buttons on the lid here that allows us to open that and access this here, and this can very easily get clogged up with carpet fibres, with dust, with debris, and once it has been clogged up, it is severely going to diminish the capabilities of your vacuum. So again, it's really important to clean that off, and you can just use a brush to do so. Just brush around it. You can use this blaster that I showed you. That will blast out the funnel as well. Just make sure, again, you are doing that outside, because it will be going everywhere. You don't want to be breathing that stuff in. So we'll pop this down now as well for the time being. Next up, we have the first filter. And in our case, this is located just here under the main dustbin. So we have the filter here. This can be cleaned underwater. You can blast it out as well. And I recommend that you do clean this regularly. if this is your main vacuum cleaner that you are cleaning with, then I recommend cleaning the filters at least once a month. If you can do it more often than that, then even better, but at least once a month. Eventually, cleaning these is not going to be enough and you are going to need to replace them. That's inevitable that that's going to have to happen, but they're usually really cheap. So having a few of these stocked in the kitchen cupboard so that they are there when you need them is definitely something I would recommend. And we also have the dust filter here as well, just underneath that. Again, make sure this thing stays nice and clean. Use your blower if you have one, but again, you can just wash this when need be. And then further on down, in this case, we have access to our next filter. So we're going to go ahead and remove the cover here, and then we can remove the filter itself. This is the main HEPA filter. So this is a really useful filter to have, and make sure once more it is nicely cleaned. I'll usually give this a blast off after every few uses of cleaning around the home. And then next up, we're going to be having a look at the floor head, and hopefully you guys can see there we do have both of the rollers, since this is a duo roller vacuum cleaner. Now, before we actually get to cleaning the rollers and the head, I do just want to show you that down at the bottom we have these switches, these things to allow us to access the hose here so we can check for blockages. So there should be some means of you being able to do this, either by removing the whole floor head or by having an access compartment such as this. Now, some model cleaners on the floor head will have a couple of screws here, like plastic screws that you just need to loosen in order to gain access to the rollers. So in this case, there's a green button just here on the side. We can move that in order to gain access to the roller here, and this can just go ahead and be cleaned. Okay, you can put this under water if need be in order to clean it off. Just make sure it is dried out before you reattach it. And in our case here, Shark have designed the PowerDetect. It seems that you are not really expected to remove this second roller. So yes, it is still possible. There's a few screws that are buried down which you can go ahead and remove in order to really disassemble this head, but for the most part that shouldn't be necessary. Because this is an anti-hair tangle, it shouldn't need all that much maintenance, and when it does, it is usually just a case of getting some scissors and cutting through the clumps of hair and carpet fibres that have built up, and that will allow you to pull them out quite easily in order to get this back into good condition. But again, I will also just use my duster here, turn this on, and then blast out all the nooks and crannies of the floor head in order to make sure that there is nothing lurking around down there that shouldn't be there. And don't be scared to keep up with the maintenance on a regular basis. Don't wait for problems to happen before you try and address them, because you're just going to be reducing the overall life then of the actual cleaner, which is obviously not ideal. So definitely keep up to date with your maintenance. There's little bits you can do even after every clean. Just check as in every time you use the vacuum cleaner, just check the filters, for example. Make sure the hoses aren't blocked up. That will only take a couple of minutes, even if you don't actually clean anything. At least you're staying on top of things at that point and know that everything's in the condition it should be. But fortunately, for the most part, the Shark PowerDetect that we use can be disassembled, as you've just seen, in most ways so that we can access the various compartments, hoses, and areas where you are likely to have issues popping up. So folks, hopefully this guide has been helpful to you. Thank you so much for following along and watching the video. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to wish you a happy day, and I'll catch you next time.